He let the sun burn an image into metal for 8 hours and accidentally invented photography, and you've probably never heard his name. His name was Joseph Nicéphore Niépce, a Frenchman working completely alone. The year was 1826. There were no cameras, no film, no darkrooms. There was only one obsession: to freeze a single moment of light forever. And he did it. He captured the first photograph in human history: a blurry rooftop, a pigeon house, the view from his upstairs window. That single image would change everything that came after it. But here's what nobody tells you. He didn't get the credit. When you ask people today who invented photography, they don't say Niepce. They say someone else. A man who shook his hand. A man who signed his name on a contract. A man who waited for him to die. We will come back to that name, because the story of how it got stolen from him is darker than you think. But first, how does a man with no instruction manual, no electricity, no lens factory, accidentally invent the most important visual technology in human history? Let me show you. He was not a photographer. He was not even a chemist. He was a hobbyist. The kind of man who took things apart on his kitchen table and put them back together wrong just to see what would happen. He had already tried to invent an internal combustion engine decades before anyone else. He failed. He had tried to improve printing presses. He failed at that too. But he kept noticing one thing: light. The way it landed on surfaces, the way it darkened certain materials over time. Leather, paper, silver. He noticed that some chemicals would change color when the sun touched them, and he could not stop thinking about it. If light could leave a mark on a surface, could it leave a picture? A real picture? A picture made by the world itself instead of a human hand? This question haunted him for years. He was running out of money. People had already started calling him crazy. His own brother thought he was wasting his life. His neighbors whispered behind his back. He spent every coin he had on bottles of acid, plates of pewter, and strange resins he scraped out of trees. He failed again and again and again. Nothing worked. And this wasn't even the craziest part. And then one summer morning in 1826, he carried a small wooden box up to his second-floor workshop, pointed it out the window, and waited. He waited 8 hours. 8 hours of sun moving across the sky. 8 hours of total silence. The slowest shutter click in human history. What he had built, he called a heliograph, from the Greek words for sun and drawing. A drawing made by the sun itself. Inside the wooden box was a small pewter plate coated with a thin layer of bitumen, a kind of ancient tar, the same stuff used to seal boats. When sunlight hit the coated plate, the bitumen hardened in the bright spots and stayed soft in the shadows. After 8 hours of exposure, he carried the plate to his workbench. He poured lavender oil over it. The smell filled the room. He waited. And when he washed the plate, something impossible appeared. A real image. A view of his courtyard, captured by light, untouched by any human hand. It was blurry. It was strange. The shadows were wrong because the sun had moved across the entire sky during the exposure and lit both sides of every roof. But it was a photograph. The first one. Ever. The first time in the history of our species that a moment of reality was preserved exactly as it looked by the world itself. He held it in his hands, in a quiet room, in a quiet village, completely alone. No fanfare, no announcement, no applause. Just one tired old man and a small metal plate, holding the first frozen second of human vision. Now here is where the story turns. He knew he had something extraordinary, but he was running out of time and money and life. He needed a partner, someone with funding, energy, and connections. And he found one. A flashy, ambitious painter from Paris who ran a famous theater of optical illusions. The painter's name was Louis Daguerre. The two men signed a partnership. They agreed to share every discovery. They agreed to publish every result under both names. They wrote each other long letters. They traded chemicals. They traded secrets. And then, in 1833, he died suddenly, with very little money, almost no recognition, and no warning at all. Daguerre kept working. He kept the secrets. And 6 years later, in 1839, he walked into the French Academy of Sciences and announced to the world that he had invented photography. He called the new process the Daguerreotype, after himself. He didn't just improve it, he took it, and the world believed him. The French government bought the patent and gave it away to the world. He became famous overnight, internationally celebrated, financially rewarded, and just like that, he became the name the world remembers. The real creator's name was barely mentioned, a footnote, in someone else's revolution. Remember the question from the beginning: who invented photography? Most history books still say Daguerre. Most museum plaques still say Daguerre. But the very first photograph ever taken, the actual first one, the one that proved it was even possible, was made 13 years before that announcement. Made in a quiet upstairs room by Joseph Nicéphore Niépce. And it still exists. You can see it today at the University of Texas in Austin. A small, dark, blurry rectangle of pewter behind glass in a climate-controlled room. The oldest surviving photograph on Earth. And the craziest part? You've probably already seen a version of that image without even knowing it. In a textbook, in a documentary, in a Wikipedia thumbnail you scrolled past last year. The picture is everywhere. The name is nowhere. When you stand in front of it, you are not just looking at a picture. You are looking at the very first moment a human being stopped time. The very first second of every photograph that has ever been taken since. Every wedding, every newborn, every protest, every face you have ever scrolled past on a glowing screen. All of it begins in that one blurry rooftop on a summer day in 1826, captured by a man whose name almost nobody remembers. Joseph Nicéphore Niépce died believing he had failed. He never saw a film roll. He never saw a smartphone. He never saw his own photograph hanging in a museum half a world away. But every single image you have ever seen in your life exists because of him. And the next story is even stranger. You won't believe what happens next. If you felt something watching this, you are not alone. Hit like so others can find this story too. And do not hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments. If you want to see what happens next, subscribe.